Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is another episode of MMA Mayhem here on the Pottscast. I'm Darren Potts. I'm your host. As always, we're back. The final episode of the month. What better way to finish off the month than with the GM, head coach, Xtreme Couture, heavyweight champion of the world, Francis Ngannou. This is the man that puts him through his paces. It is Eric Nicksick. Eric, welcome to the podcast. Delighted to have you on the show.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks for having me.
And Eric, what's interesting about where you are right now, you're in Vegas, you're getting ready for tomorrow night's fight. Kai Boy is fighting, former guest on my podcast, actually. So it's kind of nice that we're here and we're getting the chat just before he fights tomorrow. So tell me a little bit about the training camp leading up to it. What's happening right now for you?
Oh, he's been a great addition to the team. Kai came right out after he fought Tony Kelly. I think he decided to move out here. And it was funny because I was giving him shit about it. And I told him when he moved out, I was like, hey, take like a month or two before you get a fight, just ease into Vegas. And I think he took a fight like his first week, into Vegas. It didn't go his way, unfortunately, but I thought he showed a lot of really good things in that fight. And sometimes, in a loss, you take more growth and you understand more about your career and you understand some changes you might need. And I feel like that's what Kai's done. And, he's really fit the gym well in the system that we have. To be quite honest with you, Darren, like he's one of the guys I'm really excited about in his growth and his transformation and becoming kind of one of those staple Hawaiians that we have at Xtreme Couture.
I think you've just touched on a little thread that I wanted to maybe come to a little bit later, but we're going to hit it now because you mentioned that you talked about the Hawaiians and you have quite a few of them in your gym. Danny Gay, of course, Ty Gwerder, whose episode, cheap plug, by the way, because Ty's episode is out already. If you're listening to this podcast, the episode with Ty is available. Go and check that out. I know Ty's excited to get working with you again. Tell me a little bit about sort of what your mentality is like working with these guys and what they can expect from you as a coach.
For me, it's been kind of an easy transition because I played football with a lot of guys from the island growing up in college. And, I fit right in with their style and their mentality. I'm kind of laid back. I enjoy life and I don't take a whole lot of things serious right away. And then when it comes to the fight game and football and our preparation and what we do, I think we take that very seriously. So we are all very much one, I think. And then when it comes to just the fighting style and biting down and the grittiness of the warrior heart that these guys have, it's really easy to take in. And I think you have this skill set where you can build off of, but you always have this like toughness that they can fall back on no matter what. So, you hit it on the head, man. We were basically a Hawaiian top team over here at Xtreme Couture, man. We have some savages through and through. And I actually love the fact that the Hawaiian fighters feel like they're comfortable there and they know that they can come to our gym.
Yeah, it certainly feels like home for a lot of them. I've spoken to Kai Boy, I've spoken to the Ty, and I have a few others in my sights that hopefully in the future I can connect with. But there seems to be that real hunger and desire within Xtreme Couture. And you mentioned something earlier on, in your response, you talked about fighting, you talked about football. Whenever you talked about being serious, football was thrown in there. So tell me a little bit about growing up and your love for MMA. How did you get involved with it? I know your background, you were a footballer growing up in college and all of that. So how did that transition happen?
It's kind of crazy because there are some parallels to football and MMA. You think about like football being a team sport and MMA really an individual sport, but then you start finding out that, really MMA is the ultimate team sport when you think about it, because you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. You have to have these coaches and training partners that meet your level or raise you up. And a lot of times that was football for us too, is, you're working together to achieve a common goal. And I think that's kind of what football and MMA, the parallels for me I started to understand and see. I fell in love with MMA because, I left football. I really just missed the camaraderie. I missed the people. I missed the training days and, the travels, the road trips. Those are the things you really miss the most. And of course, the game days and the fights, those are the fun part. But what I really miss is the people, man. I miss being around guys who love to get after it.
The people, right? I think that's a massive thing that you've touched on. And when Kobe was on the podcast, Kobe Fair, he talked about the atmosphere in the gym. You know, he had a little, I wouldn't say a dig at you, but he kind of said about you cranking up the tunes and a couple of things like that. But what's the atmosphere, not only what's the atmosphere like in the gym on a day-to-day basis, but for you as a GM and a head coach, what's the atmosphere that you want to create and want to keep cultivating?
I want that program mentality. I want that Nick Saban, you know, when you show up to practice, it is work time. And I want guys to understand that, you know, although pro practice, you know, they kind of hire us on, if you will, like we are employed by these fighters, but they also, there's kind of that fine line of, you know, we are there to help guide you to the place that you want to be. So you have to take our standard and what we're trying to do seriously. But you know, at the same time, they can hire and fire anybody that they want kind of at the gym. So there is that weird fine line, but I'm big on things of that sort. I think the little things is what adds up to make the big things become champions. People become champions. So, you know, I harp on that stuff, like showing up on time, showing up prepared, you know, taking care of your teammates, taking care of one another and doing all those things. And I think that's kind of trying to transcend it down through everybody from the Francis Ngannou's, the Brad Tavares's, the Dan Igues, and everybody down like the Kobe's, who are very young and impressionable in the sport. So you want those guys to be in your system, if you will, as a freshman, and when they, by the time that they're seniors, they understand what to expect. So the coach isn't the one always yelling at them. They know the standard that we set. It's not my standard, it's our standard, and that's something we all had agreed on. That's what we wanted to do. We strive to be champions. And I just take that standard by like kind of the lead of what they want. And that's how we run our practices and run our gym. So I think that's the mentality that we need to take. And, you know, it's worked out well for us.
Certainly has worked out well for you. And one of the comments that Cody made, which I really caught, was he talked about sort of the breadcrumbs and the crumbs that you talk about every day. So explain that a little bit for my listeners who maybe won't understand what you mean whenever they hear that term.
Yeah, you know, and actually, that's a terminology that I picked up off of Matthew McConaughey, one of his books.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you know, and he had a really good comment, and it made a lot of sense. He talked about crumbs being identified as regret. If you think about crumbs and the regret that you have, and maybe let's use a fight camp as an example. And let's say you lose that fight, but you're able to go back and kind of reassess the situations and things that you did throughout camp. And maybe it's the practices that you missed. You know, maybe it's because you went out a little late last night and you didn't make the early morning practice. Or maybe you made the practice, but you weren't giving 100% because you're hungover or a little tired. All these little things that he considers crumbs. And that was something that resonated with me because you see it quite a bit in the sport, Darren, is like guys lose a fight and they're like, oh, well, I did everything I could. It's like, but did you? I think you left a lot of crumbs behind. So I have no problem if a guy loses. That's something that happens in the sport. No matter what you do, you could be your absolute best. And you're going to come across a guy or a girl that can be better than you that night. But if you leave crumbs behind, those little bits of regret, those are the things that I get upset about because you're not selling out. You're not burning the boats. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. This sport, man, it's unforgiving and it'll haunt you if you don't do the right things while you're there.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. You know, a previous guest on the show, Smiling Sam Alvey, he mentioned, you know, if it comes down to maybe a judge's decision, or if you haven't given 100% in your training camp, and all of a sudden you're thinking of the Tuesday where you decided to take the day off when they worked on grappling, and that's where you got caught, or something along those lines. And as you mentioned, unforgiving. We've seen that over the years. It's time tested, that word, with this sport. It really is unforgiving. But back to your journey, because from listening to you on previous shows, you walked into the gym because you just wanted to start working out, and Randy Couture was working out, and on it goes. But tell me about those days when you first walked into that gym and that progression, because what I love to hear about, and it's a question I'm going to touch on later with you, is about the grassroots of the sport and how the sport can continue to grow. But you started out working with the kids and taking the kids program. So tell me a little bit about your journey and coming into where you are now.
Yeah, you nailed it on the head, man. I walked in and didn't know much of anything. And Randy was getting ready for Tim Sylvia. He hadn't opened the gym officially yet. And so Mike Pyle and Jay Huron and all those guys were having their own practices, and they're just like, oh, I was just a big body, a big athlete, you know. So they're like, yeah, come in and come train. And later on to find out that was, you know, I didn't understand what a green light is. And, you know, I wasn't sparring more than anything, just grappling and trying to learn that way. But, you know, I got the crap beat out of me by those guys, and deservedly so. You know, it's part of your maturation and understanding what the sport's all about. But I was too stupid to ever not come back. You know, I was like, I'll be back tomorrow. I'll see you guys. and you know, they just can never get rid of me. And to the point to where, you know, I was the most consistent guy there. I was there from morning to close a lot of times and just trying to learn and pick up whatever I could. And I was annoying, I think. I was just picking guys' brains and asking them questions and always there. And, you know, eventually I know, like, you know, Mike and Jay and those guys kind of took me under their wing. And then Dennis Davis came to Xtreme Couture, and Dennis and I really hit it off. And, you know, Dennis has been my head coach for a long time. You know, he's been the head coach for the team, and he's been an amazing individual for me. So just having that group to kind of cut my teeth and understand the sport really paid off dividends for me. And then, you know, Ray Seffo came along, helped me out with the striking. So I've had some of the best coaches in the world right at my fingertips. And all it was just asking for help and stepping outside your comfort zone. You know, so I started coaching a couple classes at the gym. I had like a grappling class on Fridays for the adults. And then when I was approached to take over the kids program, I was very reluctant to do that. I was like, I don't know, dude, this is going to be rough. And I fell in love with it. I had such a great time running the kids program. It wasn't long after that I took over the gym. So I was coaching, you know, pros, I was coaching, you know, kids, I was coaching class, I was doing this, I was doing that. And then I started really understanding the business side of the gym. And, you know, I was I'm the gym manager, I think, for it's been 8 years now. And then myself and Ryan now have run the gym at the fullest. Ryan's now the owner of Xtreme Couture. Randy signed the papers over to Ryan right before COVID. So he had the responsibility of a gym right before a pandemic. But you know, so it's the brainchild behind that gym is myself and Ryan. We call the shots there now, and you know, it's amazing because he's one of my best friends. And you know, we've been in the gym industry for so long now. We understand what it takes and kind of how to get through all the bullshit when you come to the gym, for sure.
Eric, phenomenal story, fascinating. You see, whenever you started out and you said earlier on that you were a bit annoying perhaps at the very, very start, and you were learning and you're going through the steps. Do you ever notice now, maybe it's full circle, that now you're the GM, you're running the show, and you've got these kids coming in, you've got these young guys, you've got these fighters aspiring to get into the UFC or Bellator or whatever, trying to get to the top, and they're like, Eric, what do I do here? What do I do there? Do you see those parallels at all?
All the time, man. It's every day, and I have to like stop myself from being an asshole and be like, get out of here, kid. I'm like, oh, I was the same kid, you know. So you know, you try to pay it forward as much as you can, and you know, I get it. This sport is so tough to break into. I think my story is very different than a lot of guys that are in my position. So I like the fact that I've met a lot of people. I've come across a lot of men and women both that are inspired by my path and feel like I've paved a way for them to be in the same position I am. So I take a lot of pride and respect in understanding that, you know, people feel comfortable now thinking like, well, I never was a pro fighter, but I seen Eric Nicksick get to this point, so I know I can do it too. That means a lot to me, man, because, you know, I was always very self-conscious in the fact of like, I have a very different path than most, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. But I never let somebody else's perception become my reality. So I just kept my head down and worked, and, you know, shit, here we are.
Absolutely. Here we are indeed. And you said you never let someone else's perception become your reality. And it leads me on to another topic, because that statement alone, it just screams out to me about mindset, mentality. Yeah. Tell me about mindset, mentality. What does it take to succeed in this sport? You know, one of the key words I love to talk about is consistency. But for yourself as a GM, as a coach, as the head coach of a gym, what does it take if a fighter walks in, or if I walk in off the street and say, hey, I want to become the next big thing, I want you to coach me? What does it take?
There's so many intangibles, Darren. It's just hard to point on just one. So, you know, you brought up a very key word to me, is consistency. So one of my high school football coaches, we had what we considered the 6 C's. And one of those C's was consistency. And when you start breaking down the 6 C's, they all make sense when it comes to any craft that you have. It's consistency, concentration, confidence, courage, compete, camaraderie, right? So you start thinking about those 6 C's and what they mean to us as far as our field in MMA. but really they transcend everything that we do in life, So the mentality, the mindset to me is very important, especially in this sport, right? Because sometimes you are your biggest fan. Sometimes the only good thing that you're going to hear about yourself is things that you say to yourself, so you have to be kind of, I wouldn't say delusional at times, right? But you have to be real, but you also have to kind of not listen to any of the chatter. And that goes for the good stuff too, Darren, because sometimes you get fluffed up and your head explodes a little bit too much than what it should. And then it's pretty easy to come back down to earth as well. So, the mental side of the game to me, I think is definitely my strong suit. And I feel like that's preparing fighters the right way of visualizing things and the positivity that surrounds it. It's very important. The probably the best compliment I ever received from any fighter was when Francis won the title. He said to me, man, I felt like I'd already won before. Like I visualized, we went through this and we made sure we visualized everything from not only the fight, Darren, but the celebration, the aftermath, feeling what you were going to feel like when you went home and put that belt around his mom, like all those things. I made him kind of manifest those feelings. So when we got done with the fight, it was about a week later. He said, man, like, I felt like I'd already done it before. And that felt good to me, knowing that all of our mental preparation was working, that he's already known that feeling, what it felt like to be there. So that really meant a lot. And it showed me, as a coach, there's a lot of power behind that, the visualization, the mental side of this game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen different fighters. Obviously, Francis is a massive example, a recent example, one that you can obviously attest to, being there, seeing it, experiencing that with him. Obviously, I'm originally from Belfast, so I'm a little biased towards the Irish guys.
Mm-hmm.
Conor McGregor talked a lot, especially more so in his early days, I suppose, about the mindset, and haven't heard too much of it, but he talked a lot about visualization. And I think that's massive. Was that something that you always had, even at football level, when you were playing in high school and college?
Yeah, my dad used to make me go through visualization drills in Pop Warner and in like the youth football league. So it's crazy because I remember laying in bed. I was a wide receiver, and I remember my dad before a game was, "Hey, I want you to just visualize the whole game from first quarter to the final play of the game." And as a young kid, you're trying your best. Like I remember thinking back, laying there and trying to do this. But here's what the interesting part was for me was, we played at this high school that had like these, the lights at this high school were very different from every high school you played at. It was an older high school. It was an away game, and the lights were more yellow than anything. And I remember visualizing, it was so hard at night to catch balls at this place, because of the lights. And I remember visualizing catching a fade route in this light and how it like kind of breaks through at the very last second and then stabbing and catching it. And sure as shit, Darren, I remember in the game running this route, this fade route, and every little detail that I visualized and I saw within my mind's eye created in life. And as I'm running this route, as I'm seeing this ball come, I'm like, holy shit. Like I'm having this epiphany. Like I've been here. And now I'm like, in a weird way, like I had to like kick myself out of it to go catch the fucking ball, pay attention. But everything slowed down to me. And it was a very young age for me at the time. And then it really made me realize that this is something that actually works. This is something that I truly started to believe in when I was, young in Pop Warner. And then this happened to me in high school. So, 16, 17 years old, running that play through my head, it's happening to the T. And I'm like, man, there's something here. I believe in this. Like, I just want to keep doing this. And, Trevor Moab's got a great book out. It Takes What It Takes is the name of the book. And he talks about his dad and how his dad just always was the positive thinking guy. But the line is, the dad would say, I don't know if positive thinking works 100% of the time, but I know that negative thinking works 100% of the time. So he goes, I'd rather just think positive than always think negative, and that really resonates. So when you think about just that mental side of the game, especially what you're feeding your brain, the diet you're feeding your brain is imperative no matter what you do in life, man. Not only is it imperative here, but that transcends down as well. So me being the head coach at Xtreme Couture, if my mindset is constantly negative, if I'm putting that out there, then guess who's feeding off of my diet? The rest of my team, the rest of the people I surround myself with. So the mental side of the game, man, has been very important to me at a very, very young age, for sure.
It seems to be the more people I speak to, and especially in the elite level, whether they be coaches or fighters, when they talk about mentality, it seems to fire them up. I can see that on the video. I can hear that on the audio whenever they're speaking. It seems to really ignite a flame. And you're not the first person to mention that book. Kevin Krum, who fights out of Glory MMA, he mentioned that book to me before Christmas, and I didn't get it, and I put it on my list and kind of forgot about it. And now you've brought it up, and I'm saying it right now publicly on this. I'm going to order that book because he brought it up, and I should have done it. And the reason he brought it up is he talked about his mindset, similar to the way you did. And he got called up to the UFC. He caught COVID. He got cut, and he thought he would never have another chance. And he said he was going to drink a bottle of Jack and just jump out of a tree or something. He said he was just nuts. He couldn't believe it. But it was really reading that book and the affirmation and the confidence that he took in, just keep going, just keep working, and eventually get another shot. And he did. And that mindset question, the mindset topic, it's so key to anything, I think, and it transcends maybe not just MMA, but all sorts of sports as well. Specifically in your gym, you have so many guys and girls, of course. I believe, I don't know if this is true or not. I've read that Misha Tate is in there training before her comeback. What's going to happen in 2021? Because Xtreme Couture is just having so many guys, girls fighting this year. There's, Dan Ige is going to fight in a couple of weeks. I believe Brad Tavares does as well. Casey O'Neill was outstanding in her last outing. She's another fight coming up. For you as the GM, you must take pride in that. And we're going to talk about your awards in a little second, but you must take pride in the amount of fighters of competing at the top level representing Xtreme Couture.
Man, it's everything to me, Darren. And that's the thing that we set out to do. And you got to think like we were on the ground floor building this thing. And, you're at the mail room level, you know what I mean? And everybody in that room is grinding and pushing. Not only do we have the guys that are in the gym now and all the names that you mentioned, but Jay Haran comes in daily, right? When he's in town, he's in our gym. You have Ray Sefo in our gym, like every day. The guys that have been there since the start, the guys that have had great careers have since retired, that we were able to kind of bring in and help, understand and maturate and push and let these guys know what we're dealing with. But it's that kind of that full circle of life, if you will, when it comes to our gym. And it means the world to me because this is what the standard and what we wanted to do and that the things that we have set out to become. But now that we're kind of in that spot, I remind these guys, this is not the end. We didn't make it. There is no end to this game. The game is finite. It's never going to stop. There's no winner at the end of this. So each day is a new day, is a new fight, right? Everybody's fight is equally as important as it is if it's a title, if it's your amateur debut. Every fight is important in this gym, and we have to maintain that mentality because now, we're getting that recognition that the gym is back and everything else. But now is the real work has begun. We haven't made anything. We haven't made it yet because there's nowhere to go. It's always keep moving forward, man. If you feel like you made it, that means you stopped. There's nowhere else to go. So don't feel like that. And that's kind of what I remind all the teams. So, yeah, it means the world to me. I'll tell you what, the nice thing, I was telling one of my boys a couple of days ago, it's been nice pulling in the parking lot and seeing the cars change, the upgrades in the cars. You see all the looking around, I was like, yeah, we're doing pretty good. All these cars are starting to get upgraded, these carpooling and, people buying this piece of shits and everything else. And like, there are some good cars in the parking lot. That means a lot to me.
Obviously, as a gym, you see the growth and the exponential growth and just how the gym is growing and the fighters are growing. And obviously, as you see the gym grow and the cars get better, you're seeing these fighters get better every day. You've won awards, Gym of the Year, Coach of the Year. How much? Obviously, you must take pride in that. I'm assuming you do. But how much does that mean a lot to you to win those awards?
It does. It really does. And it's those awards. I think for me, really set the example or those awards really go to my family because they're the ones that really sacrifice so much time away from me, so to be able to bring those awards and those accolades home, it's almost kind of just reassurance to me that they know that I'm doing my job and I'm doing my job well and I'm taking it seriously. I'm not dicking around because this is it, man. This is the only time that we have and we don't get this shit back. So if it's not being used wisely and it's not going to my family, then to me, it's just a waste. But yeah, man, it really does mean a lot. And, you know, the team and the guys around the gym, they've been so supportive to me. Like when you win an award like Coach of the Year, that means we won Gym of the Year in a lot of ways. You know, I don't win that award without these guys winning fights. You know, it just doesn't work that way. So everything kind of is connected, and a rising tide raises all ships, man. That's the mentality in the gym, and everybody feels like that win kind of went to all of us. But now it's got to get right back to work. Now we got to defend it, you know?
Well, that's the thing, is that you've mentioned that all the way through. Don't think that you've made it. There's always work to do. And that seems to be a bit of maybe a mantra for you. And I'm assuming you don't let these guys realize that they've made it, they've got to the top. You're constantly pushing them to get better. You mentioned your family in your last answer. How big is it to have your family backing you and supporting you? Because you're married, you're a father of I think it's 3, I believe, or is it 5? Sorry, I forget. 3. Okay.
3. Thank God. Hopefully not. Well, 3 that live in my house, but about 30 that live in my gym.
There we go. Yeah, absolutely. Apologies for the 5, but yeah, you're a father of 3 as well. But how important is that for you? You know, the family support and the backing, and how do they support you and help you do what you do?
It's everything, and it's why you get into this sport, you know. And if you didn't have that push from home, that they didn't feel like what you were doing was worth its while, then I think you start seeing a lot of pushback, you know. I don't know if my wife was 100% on board with the travel and everything that I was doing for a while, but what she did see was my passion. She saw how much it meant to me and what I wanted to become. So sometimes I know that the more of the hard work was laid on her lap with raising 3 kids while her husband's on the road, you know, and doing everything else. And sometimes I can see her, how tired and how, you know, disgruntled she might be when I got home, but she always kind of kept the same, like, you know, I know this is what you're supposed to do, and I know this is what you want to do, and kept pushing me. So, you know, winning that award, man, really was an award for her, to be honest with you, and to be able to bring that home. But, you know, my kids, they take a special interest in this fight game, you know, and I know that, like, the relationship with my son and Francis has been kind of a public thing that people have seen, but you know, it's something else when they are invested as well, when they're invested in the fighters. So it just makes things like that so much better, man. And to be able to see my family celebrate Francis's win, I watched the video of, you know, everybody in the house celebrating. That meant a lot. I felt that love from the venue. I felt that love from the Apex. You know, everybody texting and writing, and the videos that were coming in, the outpour, everybody was on board and rowing the boat the same direction. And that means a lot, man. You really need that, Darren, in this industry. It's tough, man. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, absolutely. And my wife, who will listen to this, and we're expecting our first child, and we've always kind of pushed for, like, when the kid gets older, I want to put them into some form of martial art. And she's like, no, it's too violent. I want her to listen to this and see that it's good for the kids and all that sort of stuff. As a former instructor for kids, I'm sure you would agree.
I do.
Yeah, she's trying to push me away from it. Put them into soccer, and I'm like, no, I want to get them into some form of martial art, but we'll cross that bridge, I guess, when we get there.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on the first, man. That's great news.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Nervous, excited, everything thrown into one, but
just what you should be.
Yeah, just wait till September comes. Another couple of fighters. We'll talk about Francis in a little bit. Aljamain won the title. Obviously, it wasn't the way he wanted to win it. It probably wasn't the way that, as a coach, you prepare a fighter to win a title. At the end of the day, rules were broken, and he won the title, and the rules are rules, and that's it at the end of the day. But I felt, actually, at the time, it'd be interesting to hear your opinion on this, that he took a bit of unfair criticism, especially, and it can be a blessing and it's also a curse, and it's social media. And I thought he took a bit of an unfair battering because of how he won the title, and it wasn't him. You know, it's the rules. It is what it is, and it happened. But what was sort of your thoughts on it at the time?
You nailed it on the head. I mean, he didn't do anything wrong. You know, he was the victim to an illegal knee. When it happened, I was like, why did he it was so egregious and right in front of us. And Mark Smith's like, he's grounded, and then the knee flies. You know,
yeah.
I know Peter Young. I've trained with him. He's a great kid. He's a great competitor. He's a beautiful champ. You know, all these things. I don't think that was his mindset, was to hurt him in this way. in a lot of ways, it was kind of a brain fart, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But, you know, it is what it is. And now when it comes to social media, man, it's tough. You're never going to be 100% liked by everybody. You know, when that happened, it was very much 50-50. And I told Aljo, hey, I would just stay off of social media for 2 days.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even get on, man. I wouldn't even worry about it. You don't have to say anything. Just, it is what it is. And that's the way it happened, you know. But, you know, he wanted to be vocal about things and come forth. And I support him 100% with that too. He did nothing wrong. So it's some of the stuff, I think the way it came off and the way it looked didn't look great for him to help his case. But again, like I said, like, he did nothing wrong. If he wants to go on a fucking parade after he wins the belt, that's his decision. And he's my guy, and I'm going to support him, and I love him to death, and he needs to do whatever he feels right. You know, and I'm really glad he went and got that surgery done. That was something that was hampering him for well before, you know, our fights even, the first fight was even scheduled. So I'm glad that got done. He can be healthy and get back to training. And, you know, that fight's going to get reran, and we'll get back after it again. And, you know, there's only one way to make that fight, you know, the true champion is go back in the cage and square it off.
Yeah, 100%. And it's a fight I think everyone's looking forward to, because it's a fight I think that whether whoever you follow, if you like Peter or if you liked Aljamain, whoever, you were excited for that fight. It's just a fun fight. And from your perspective as a coach, you've obviously probably seen and taken some notes and seen some areas for him to improve, or some holes maybe in Peter's game as well. You must be excited to run that fight back as well as a coach.
Oh, of course. And I think really, you know, that was the third UFC title I've cornered. And, you know, my experience there is still, you know, it's still very young when you think about it, but it was Aljamain's first title experience. And I think him understanding those nerves and jitters, that adrenaline dump and everything else that he might have experienced in that fight. Now we have a little bit that we can understand on how to pace ourselves. We saw a lot of great things from him in that fight, and we saw a lot of great things from Jan as well. And so there's very rare times in this sport, Darren, where you get to run it back right away. You know, so, you know, we basically had a playoff game, and we won, and now we get to meet the guy in the championship, you know, so it's kind of crazy that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be fun for everyone involved. You know, I mean, I can't wait for it. You know, I'm glad he's had the surgery. Hope he's on the mend, and I can't wait to see when that fight gets booked, because that's going to be fun. But turning our attention to Francis, you know, you've touched on him already. You mentioned the relationship between him and your son. I thought that was amazing. The only thing I have, which I think sucks about Francis winning the title, and hear me out, because you're going to think, what on earth is he going to say? It was the fact there wasn't fans there. I wish that was the first card back with fans, because I think that atmosphere, the reaction, I mean, it was amazing just to see the reaction with small number there, but I can just based on the card we've seen this weekend with fans, I can just imagine what it would have been like with fans. But tell me a little bit, first of all, like, we have a saying over home in Belfast that, oh, that's the type of person you could take out for a pint. Francis comes across like the type of lad you could just take out for a pint. Tell me a little bit about your relationship with him and how it started for you, and how that sort of blossomed, because I know you guys are very, very close.
Yeah. So, you know, first about the fans, you're absolutely right, man. That there was a small group in there, and that small group, that energy, just that small group brought was quite intense. But man, it would have been beautiful to have that in a big arena. You know, that would have been a lot of fun. And we were the first time was in Jacksonville with no fans, you know, and then I watched this last fight with Usman in Jacksonville. I was like, man, could you imagine if Francis was here knocking out, you know, Jairzinho in this venue, man? That would have been insane. So, yeah, so Francis and I, you know, he's been in Vegas for 3-4 years now, I believe, if I remember correctly. But, you know, I think it took a while for Francis to kind of find his footing and understand, who and what people there he can trust and he can lean on. And, you know, I've always been there for him. We've always been friends, but, he asked me to corner him for Junior, and he really started full time at Xtreme Couture, Darren. It was, Curtis Blades 2. Yeah. So he fought Curtis Blades the second fight. And then his manager, Markel, and I are very close. He asked me about cornering him for the Cain Velasquez fight. And it was just a little bit of timing differences. I happened to be out there for the fight in Arizona. we kind of, talked whatever else through the gym and worked on a few things. And then it was the JDS camp. So after that, he actually says to me after the fight, it's very interesting. He's like, man, I've been testing you. I go, testing me for what? And he's like, I just wanted to, he's an energy guy. He knows people's energies. He feels like he knows what their intent is with him. And he just always told me, he goes, I just feel like yours is pure. You care for me. You actually care about me. And he's right. I do. I mean, he means the world to me as a friend, and moreover than anything. So that really started to make our friendship turn. So Jairzinho fight, it ended up being a 14, 15-week camp. We were about a week out from going to Columbus, Ohio to fight, and then pandemic hit. So we didn't know what we had, what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, when we're going to fight. But I did know that I didn't want to let everything that we did prior leading up to this fight go to waste. So myself and Francis just kind of made a pact, and we just said, look, man, you and I are going to go to the gym every day. We're going to train. We're going to hit pads. We're going to lift weights. It's going to be this Rocky style training camp. You're going to come over for dinner. You're going to be part of the family, because now if we're breaking this quarantine, you're now exposed to me and I'm exposed to you. So you might as well come over to the house and be part of the family. And man, it was the best thing for all of us, man, because here's this poor guy sitting at home with nobody. Here's my family sitting here stuck in the house, and then we bring Francis over, and that's really where you start to see like the friendship, the family, everything begin to blossom. And a lot of times, Darren, you think about it, man, it's just sweat equity. It's just spending time with one another. And that's, I think, what really made our friendship close and our bond really tight. He's a brother to me. I love him to death. I'll do anything for the man. And I feel like he would do the same for me and my family too.
It's incredible to hear. And I think during COVID as well, especially around the world, when you see the rise of mental illnesses and people being frustrated and all that sort of stuff going on, it brings us back to mentality that we touched on earlier. But to see and experience that, where maybe you're able to bring someone into your house, bring them, make them part of the family, keep that energy, maintain that mindset, and push through, because what was a struggle for most people, some people were able to capitalize on it. And I think that's amazing. And Francis was, because obviously he was working every day with you. You guys weren't stopping. It's a pandemic. We got to go to work, and the work was put in. And I think as well, and I have to be honest, because I'm a huge Cain Velasquez fan. It was the last, and probably still is, the heavyweight fight that I've been the most excited about in about 10 years. And when it ended so quickly, I was just devastated. I was like, are you kidding me? Really? I was gutted because I love a huge Cain Velasquez fan.
He's crazy, man. And when you're around him enough and you train with him enough and you hold pads from enough, obviously his power it jumps off the page. You see it, you understand it, but when you actually feel it, it's something different, man. There's no other Mike Tyson effect that I've ever been close enough to really feel and understand than Francis Ngannou.
That's the thing, isn't it? Because it's ironic you've said that, because I was watching a Mike Tyson documentary yesterday. And when I was watching it, I was actually thinking of Francis, being like, he's probably the first person I've came across since, I wasn't even alive during Tyson's heyday, but looking back at it and seeing all the sort of stuff and the media that went alongside Tyson, Francis had that in the UFC, this one hit KO, everyone's dead if he hits them par. And he was just killing everybody until really he met Stipe for the first time. And Stipe, in my opinion, probably the greatest of all time at the heavyweight division so far. I think Francis, by the end of his career, might want to say something about that. But certainly, up to this point, probably the best that I've seen. What did you take away as a coach from the first fight? And what did Francis take away? And how did you decide this is what we're going to work on, and we're going to come back, and we're going to come back stronger?
Well, I think he was the best guy to go to, your best resource of information, because he was in there. And really sit down and conjure up those thoughts and feelings that he once had. And I think sometimes a lot of fighters like to just block that off and kind of, I don't want to talk about that. And well, you know what, man, I want to know everything about it, to be honest with you. I want to know everything about it so I understand how to prepare. And I don't think that he was in a good place back then, between camps, between moving, between here, he was spread out pretty thin. So I think a combination of all those things really was shown on that night. And I don't think it was really one person, one thing, one issue, one problem. I think it was a combination of all of those. So being able to get him back, get him into our gym, into a system and a consistency, a level of consistency that he felt confident and comfortable with. And then, I think he needed that loss. I just think he did for his mental side. I think he needed it to figure out what he wanted to do and how he wanted to approach this game, how he wants to be remembered. And that really lit a fire under his ass. I can't want it more than you. I can't just be a rah guy and then you just kind of meet me halfway. Like, you have to want it more than me. And that's really been his mentality. There's things I think he had to face with the cardio. I think there's things he had to face with the wrestling. And he could have very easily taken the short route on just, I'll dabble in a little bit of this stuff. But what we talked about, I was like, man, look, if you can conquer those areas that you feel like you want to improve in, there ain't nobody out there that can ever stop you. So if we don't work one day of hitting a pad, I guarantee you're still going to hit hard. I guarantee you're still going to have knockout power. So let's focus mainly on the things and areas that we want to improve on and step outside our comfort zone and build on those areas. And then we'll touch on the other things that we're already good at.
I thought the performance, especially in the second fight, I thought the performance was flawless. I know Stipe maybe caught him with a little punch there, just as Francis hit him to knock him out. But when I watched it, I just went, wow, that was flawless. He was excellent. Stipe, known for the takedown, the wrestling, went for it. Not only to block it, but the footwork, the maneuver around it, all that, everything that encompassed that performance. I thought it was a complete performance, and I'm sitting here, that might not mean much from an armchair fan, but for me sitting there, that's sort of what I thought. For you as a coach in the corner, was there nerves? Was there any trepidation? I knew this was going to happen. We talked earlier about the visualization. Yeah. Talk to me about your sort of experience that night as well.
So there was a lot of nerves leading up to it, I think, and a lot of like, okay, did we cover enough of this? We cover enough of that. And Darren, I'll tell you what, man, the moment we got in the tunnel to walk, there was just this relief that I was like, you know what? It's like jumping out of an airplane. It's like at this point we're jumping and there is no turning back. And I felt this just big relief come over and I had a big smile on my face. And I'm like, we're going to go do this, So everything that we worked on from beginning of camp to the fight week just unfolded right in front of us. Every little thing. And I always equated it to football. And being on the offense, you usually have your first 10 plays sketched out. You're going to run these first 10 plays, right? No matter what, here's our first 10. And it just was like your very first play hit for like 35 yards, and then your next play hit for another 35 yards. And the next play was a touchdown. So it was like, shit, everything just started to roll. So we knew, man. And I got in the corner with them going into round 2. And it was funny because I actually was cracking jokes at him, because I was like, man, this is great. This is the first time I ever had you in the corner. Like, grab a seat, I'm like, welcome to the corner. And he's like, yeah, man, this is awesome. So when I knew like kind of where he was at in his breathing and how relaxed he was, and he was in this flow state of mind, I just knew it was only a matter of time, man. So yeah, it was amazing. And, I'm glad that you saw what I saw too, because it was really a masterclass by Francis. He stayed calm. He listened to everything that the corner had. He listened to the game plan and he executed it flawlessly.
Yeah, amazing performance. Before obviously the lockdown and the circuit breakers that we had up here in Canada, we were able to get out to the pub for it. And this is why I always wish there was fans there, because the pub exploded. Everyone in the pub blew up, and I'm like, so going, there should have been fans there.
Yeah,
and I think that's what got it for me in terms of the fans. I had guys standing on chairs screaming. And I'm just like, this is amazing. It really was just such a flawless performance. Talk to me a bit about the afters, because obviously I've seen a really cool picture of your mother with Francis in the belt. I just thought it was brilliant, and from a fan perspective, I just thought that's class. It's really, real class, and a classy touch as well from Francis. Tell me what happened after. There must have been a few beverages consumed, I imagine.
I wish there was a lot more. There wasn't a whole lot. It was just a lot of like, obviously there's a lot of media and press right after. And then we're kind of whisked away to go. We have to go to this after party. We have this sponsor. There's this, there's that. But all the while, I just knew by talking to my family and talking to my mom, just how happy they were. And usually these fights, Darren, are on the road.
Yeah.
So I don't get to partake in anything, the excitement. So it meant the world to me for my family to be able to come and just celebrate in the moment with everybody. And that was the organic reaction that you saw. I have a great picture of, all four of my girls, if you will. It was my mom, my wife, and my two daughters, and my sister took the picture, but all of them are just crying. So you could just imagine just how happy they were. And so to be able to bring them out to the little bit of after party that we had, and to be able to share in that moment, man, it was amazing. It was so important. My mom's a nut, man. She's in this sport. She's in the sport through and through, bro. She knows more about everything than I do. She's constantly sending me, did you see this? Did you read this? Did you talk to so-and-so? Like, no, mom, like, I don't. So yeah, it was, my mom is full tilt into the sport. She loves her fighters, or my fighters, as much as I do. So.
Oh, that's so good. I mean, my mom tries to get involved and sent me a message the other day and was like, what would happen if Francis fought John Cena? I'm like, Mom, they're totally different. Like one's in rest WWE, and then she'd be like, oh, I thought they were just fighters. That's my mom messing around and stuff. But I love that connection. You have that connection, with your family and Francis and everything that's going on there. And that's years of hard work and blood, sweat, and tears. And now it brings me to what's next. Because, John Jones tweeting out the night off, pay me. He wants the money for the fight. And I'm totally all for fighters being paid what they rightfully should and get as much as they can. Go for it. Go nuts. John Jones, the unsolvable puzzle so far, moving up the heavyweight. Before we talk about maybe that fight and John Jones particularly, as a coach, when you see a puzzle, if I can refer to John Jones as a puzzle, the unsolvable puzzle, does that get you excited? Because I think it would.
100%. And that's why you get into sport. I'm a competitor through and through. And I think John Jones is the pound for pound best to ever do it in this sport. And there's no bigger honor and no better challenge in the world than be able to go and compete against a guy like John and, his great camp of Jackson Wink and Brandon Gibson and those guys. I have the utmost respect for that whole team, everything that those guys do. But that's what we are. We're competitors. We set out in the sport because we want the challenge. We don't want the easy route. And, I think that's the fight to make. And God bless John Jones because he's making our job easier. He's driving the market up for all of us, and deservedly so. I don't blame him one bit. And I really hope that he gets what he's asking for. And I hope that this fight happens because, it's the fight that everybody wants to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure is it the fight that Francis wants?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's the fight definitely Francis wants, and I think it's the right fight to make. Derek Lewis is very deserving of a title opportunity as well. I don't think you can scoff at his recent winning streak of 4 wins, and he's with the most knockouts, and they've already fought. I get that whole narrative, but Derek is right there. So it's like a 1A and 1B situation. Obviously, we're trying to maximize the financials and make the most money that we can while we can. And, John Jones brings that to light right away. But whatever they decide, we're going to be prepared one way or another. I think on paper it's for fans, for all of us, for, everybody that's involved in this sport, that loves this sport. That is the 1.2 million pay-per-view buys. And that's the fight that I think gets everybody excited.
Yeah. For me as a fan, that is the fight, isn't it? It's the box office fight. It's the ultimate. Whenever you look, if you start doing fantasy matchups and putting guys' names on paper against each other, that's the fight you want to see. It's Francis and Jones. And I think, fingers crossed, it happens. It better happen with a crowd. I think it will happen with a crowd, given what's happened the last week or so. Talk to me a little bit about Kamaru Usman. He's been around a little bit at the minute. With Francis. They've a friendship there. I know he was working in the gym before his fight. Tell me a little bit about that relationship and what you see for Kamaru.
Kamaru is great. I've known him a long time, man. I've known Kamaru for quite a few years now and been watching his rise. And there's been the thing that's always been consistent with Kamaru has been his mindset, and this position that he's been in is not surprising to him. This is where he's expected to be. And I like that about him, man. I'm very good friends with both Henry Hooft and Trevor Whitman. They've been mentors of mine and guys that I look up to a lot, guys that I lean on a lot. So he's had the benefit of having two, in my opinion, Hall of Fame coaches and guys that he's really you can see a lot of their work with his skills. So, having Kamaru in the gym, now that he's like doing most of his stuff out in Denver, he's out in Vegas quite regularly. And really, he just brought the experience factor to our corner. It was nothing with really like he's going to help with the wrestling, for 1 week. It was nothing like that. It was really just that he understand what it's like to be in this position and what it's like to fight for the belt, to answer any questions that we might have on how fight weeks are and the media obligations. And really, man, like he was just a calming presence, I think, for everybody, myself included. But an overall good dude, overall good energy for the corner. That's what he brought. And I think that's where you started to see, like, it was paid forward too. And Francis hopped on the plane and flew out to Jacksonville, did the same for him. I love that relationship. They're both great human beings. And, how could you not love having a champion in your corner,
Yeah. And what a performance this weekend as well.
I mean, I wasn't surprised, to be honest with you. And I'm a big Masvidal fan, and I've known George a long time also. And I think that's really a testament of Kamaru's growth and what you're seeing out of him and the way his development has come along in this sport. Seeing him win by knockout was no surprise by me. I hold pads for Kamaru when he's in town. I get to work with him. And I get to see him on a daily. This kid is the real deal, man. And some of the things he's been working on with Coach Whitman has only really just made him better, and already that beautiful base that Henry Hoost already started him off with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of my favorite fighters of all time, GSP, people, when they talk about GSP, they always talk about the fantasy matchup, GSP and Khabib. And I've always found it strange that no one's really talked about the fantasy matchup of maybe GSP and Kamaru, because that for me would be massive as well. Obviously, I know GSP says he's retired and all this sort of stuff, but certainly on paper as a fantasy match, that'll be something, I would love to have seen potentially.
Yeah, especially with both being in their prime right now. The argument now is like, GSP comes out of retirement to take this fight. He's not the GSP that we once knew and loved.
Yeah.
He's been out of the game for about 3 or 4 years since his last fight. And then prior to that, he was out of the game for a while. So, but no, you're absolutely right. I think GSP can come out of bed and compete against anybody that he wants to at a highest level. So, but yeah, Kamaru and GSP would be one of those amazing matchups that I think one of those fantasy super fights, if you will.
Yeah, 100%. There's an interesting topic on Joe Rogan's podcast this week. He was talking with Wonder Boy, and really good podcast. If anyone's looking for an MMA podcast that isn't mine, listen to that one. It was really good. Wonder Boy was talking about longevity at the top, and they were talking a bit about Tyron Woodley and how after he lost the title, he's kind of just went on this downward spiral. And they were talking about, it's where a lot of guys maybe struggle once they lose the title, whether it be their confidence goes, whether it be maybe something else. And they were just talking about how can a fighter stay at the top? What can a fighter do to stay at the top? And in your opinion as a coach, is there any way you can help a fighter stay at the top?
Yeah, I think you can. I think you have to stay on them to the level of understanding what got you there. But, that was the first thing I said to all of us, all the guys, Kamaru, myself, Francis, Markel, Coach Dewey. We won the fight, the title. My first words was like, hey, now the real work begins. We can't let off the gas pedal, and you have to evolve. You have to stay on the cutting edge. You have to make sure that you're doing all those things that's important in honing your craft now, because the target's on your back. So you look at guys like LeBron James and Tom Brady, and why are they always been at the top of their game and the top of their field is because they never had that I made it mentality. There are people trying to catch me, and I want to get better in areas. And I think that might happen a lot when guys win the title. They think that that's it. They made it. I won the title. But now you see guys, what their real goal is to be at the mountaintop and not let anybody come up there with them, So I don't want to speak for Tyron. I don't know him like that. But I definitely, feel for the guy, man, because in my opinion, when he was winning and he was on a roll, he looked unbeatable. And sometimes I think that just creeps into your head that, it's like that in baseball where you just can't get a freaking hit. You just can't get a freaking hit for the life of you. So, I hope that he finds his footing and turns something around. And, I like to see him try to keep fighting. I know he's not with the UFC anymore, but he's got a God-given talent, and he's one of the best to ever do it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've always liked Tyron Woodley. It seems to be a lot of people seem to really get on the sort of social media, didn't like him. They called him boring and all that side of thing. I'm not really too into that. I like to see how different people can win fights different ways.
Yeah.
I admire that. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's more than one way to skin a cat, so to speak. And there's various different ways to win a fight.
Well, one of my favorite guys that we have at our gym now is Jake Shields, and he was one of my favorite guys to watch. And he was labeled as boring. But when you watch Jake Shields and what he's able to do and how he can hold another grown man down and keep them down, in my opinion, I think it's the hardest thing to do in the sport. Somebody that doesn't want to be there is fighting tooth and nail to get out of there, and you're able to do it for 15 or 25 minutes. And that takes a lot. Now, the fans don't pay our bills. They kind of do. I guess they do in a way. But at the end of the day, we have a job to get 2 paychecks. That's the way the sport has been set out. Now, if you really want to see guys go out and throw leather and fight a certain way, pay them more money and pay them guaranteed money. And I guarantee you're going to see crazier fights than what you do. But when you're predicated on, well, I have to win to get 2 paychecks, I have to win any way possible. If that means it needs to be boring, you're going to be boring. If that means I have to do this, you're going to do whatever it takes to get there. So I think the system itself is kind of flawed in a lot of ways. And that's what you see sometimes when you see a boring fight or a boring game plan. It's guys are just trying to win any way they can.
Yeah, and you're right. I think the system's set up for that. Sometimes, like you said, pay people more and you'll see more at the end of the day. Those guarantees probably, I wouldn't say probably, those guarantees definitely are not where they should be for fighters, for people putting their lives in their hands and going in to go to war with another person effectively for entertainment purposes. There should be more money in the sport. And as much as I'm not a fan of Jake Paul, I thought some of the comments that he made to Dana White were actually quite relevant and quite spot on, to be perfectly honest.
I agree.
Really good conversation. A couple more questions for you, and then we'll wrap this up because I know you're in Vegas. I know it's fight week. I don't want to literally keep you all night because this would be brilliant. So some random questions and some fun questions here thrown in. Favorite genre of music or artist? What is put on in the gym every day? What are you getting the boys pumped up with?
It's a good man. They get mad at me, but I'll bump. So some days it's like just all this 80s music, like random 80s. When Joe Benavidez is in, he takes over, and it's Joe Benavidez, man. It's a wild array of music, and you'll be hearing stuff from like the 50s to like Kanye to Louis Vega or whatever. I don't know, man. All kinds of weird shit. And then, but I think the general consensus in the gym is, it's usually like some rap. I'm a big Run the Jewels guy. I like Run the Jewels a lot. So we play that quite a bit. Classic rock, I can plug on any AC/DC or classic rock, and everybody's going to be okay with that. But, Coach Giff and I, we actually like a little bit of like old town, like Motown, some soul music, some James Brown. That's in the afternoons. It's kind of mellow. And, I yell at people, if you don't like James Brown, you can get the fuck out. So that's what I'll yell at people during practice.
The face that runs the place is spoken. Just enjoy the music or get out.
Get out, man. You don't like it, get the fuck out.
Another one for you. What do you do to relax? What's your favorite sort of hobbies to chill out?
Oh, that's a great question, Darren. I should probably think of this more often. I actually just enjoy my time with my kids and my wife. My son's 4 now. So my 13-year-old daughter, I was bringing into the gym in the carrier, so I would time my training sessions to her meals and then her naps. So I would feed her, and then I knew she was about to nap. I'd go to the gym and she'd nap for a couple hours, and I'd train. Then I'd feed her again, and then we would play, and then she would go back down for another nap, and I'd have some more time to train. So, my oldest daughter has been really literally bred and brought up in through my gym. And then, it's nice now when it's come with my son. I bring my son into the gym and let him play and hit the bags, and, he'll mess around with all the guys. And that's how I remember growing up as a kid with my dad on the football field. So, my relaxation time is really just as much time as I can put back into the family. I always look at this job in a way of like kind of like a bank account, where if you're pulling money out, you have to deposit the same amount back in, and your family is essentially that bank account.
Yeah, obviously wife, couple of kids, 3 kids. It's a lot of work for you, but you look like you're having a lot of fun in both aspects of your life, the private family life and also the public training life. You look like you're having a lot of fun.
Yeah, I certainly am, man. It's been a lot of fun, and it's been an interesting ride, that's for sure. I never thought really this was what it's going to pan out to be, but I'm very thankful that it is, and I know my family enjoys it, and we got more to come, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. One big question to finish, but before I get there, I just want to touch on a couple of fighters that are in your gym.
Sure.
Casey O'Neill, amazing fight last time. Fight coming up. What's she like to work with?
She's a psycho. She's a psycho. I tell Ty all the time, because Ty's like my little brother, and they date. I said, bro, I'm in love with your girl. Like she's the, and I don't mean that by sexually at all. I mean that by like her mindset and what she brings to the table in the gym. She don't give a shit who's in front of her. She'll spar Francis Ngannou the same way she spars in a fight, or she'll spar a girl, and she's amazing, man. And I love her to death. She gets me fired up when I watch her train, when she spars, her attitude, the way she approaches the game. She's been one of my favorite additions to Xtreme Couture for sure in a while, like female wise for sure. Definitely. She's been amazing.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Can't wait to see what happens, for her. You mentioned Ty there, Ty, whose podcast is out. Again, second cheap plug. Go and check out that podcast. He said he's excited to have you back in his corner. His last fight, it's quite humorous to me looking back, not the fact that he lost, but the fact he had to fly up by himself with no coach. And then eventually, I think it was Coach Nate flew out, if I remember correctly. And then he had to get surgery and all that stuff that's going on. But he's on the comeback, and I believe he has a fight this summer. He told me that, was it last night? 2 nights ago when we were chatting. He's a fight this summer. What's Ty like to work with, and what's in his future?
He's been a born, like, bred kid through Xtreme Couture. He came out here because of Brad. He's basically Brad Jr. He looks just like the guy,
Yeah.
But he's really cut his teeth in pro practice. Him and Uriah Hall, Brad Tavares, he's had some of the best training partners in the world that he's been brought up with. So, Ty's a guy that's been battle tested very early in this sport, especially in our gym. So I love the kid to death. His attitude is great. He works so hard. Him and I have a great relationship. And, it's hard because I think I was still testing positive for COVID when he had his fight. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to go out there, because if I were to gone and I was still testing positive, then I would have been stuck there for 10 days. It was just a mess, man. It was a mess. So, but I'm excited for him. I'm excited that he's back and feeling better from his injury. He's one of those kids, really the sky's the limit, man. And if he gets his head where it needs to be as far as how hard he trains and what the effort that he puts out, there's no reason why this kid's not a champ when it's all said and done.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, from my understanding, he went sort of straight into the professional game as well, from coming out here as playing football, and then just straight into fighting so early. That's kind of
right
incredible.
In the fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, right in the fire. He's an unbelievable athlete. When he first came out here, we were just always playing football together and going out to the park, and a bunch of the boys would run football and stuff and do everything. So he's been always an incredible athlete that kind of jumps off the page, if you will. So seeing his maturation in the sport, it's been quite fun to watch, because, he's always been athletically skilled, but then to see his MMA and his fight IQ develop through over time, especially when you have guys like Brad and Uriah Hall pushing him, he became those two's main sparring partners in a lot of their camps. So, Ty's been a very good teammate to these guys, and now you're starting to see his own career now begin because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And can't wait to see what happens. I have 2 more guys I want to ask you about, and then I've got my one final question for you. Dan Ige,
Oh man, that's my guy.
Talk to me about Dan.
Oh man, him and I are connected, and it's hard to explain. Where it's like you're married to somebody in a lot of ways, right? Like, he can walk in the gym, and I know right away, just by knowing Dan, how he's feeling, what's going on in his life, and vice versa. He knows me, and he knows my energies. He knows when I need a hug. He knows that, when I need we are literally connected at the hip. Our careers are parallels. We started off on the regional scene together, working hard together, coming up together, the blood, sweat, and tears, going on the road with no pay. Just when I hear Dan Ige's name, it brings a smile to my face. He really is, to me, the best the best guy when it comes to the visualization, the guy who always believed in this is where he belongs and this is where he's going to be and that he will be a champion. There's really no other fighter that I trust more in the world going into round 3 that's going to pull out a victory than Dan Ige.
Yeah, 100%. I'm excited to see what happens, with Dan. So good. His last performance was excellent. Can't wait to see what happens next. One more question about one more person, and then I actually have 2 questions, if that's okay, time-wise. The last one is Miesha Tate, back in the gym, back training. What's happening with Miesha Tate?
So she's been in training for quite a while now. We just been kept it under wraps. I didn't know. Like, we didn't know if this was what she wanted to do as far as if she wanted to fight. So the plan was to kind of ease her back into the gym, back into the program. Me being a Neanderthal, I don't really understand a lot of what the women's anatomy goes through after having 2 babies, and hearing some of the things that she's gone through injury wise and her recovery, it's still an ongoing process. So being empathetic to that situation and kind of knowing now what these females have to go through, and now to come back and fight is something different. So for us, we just really wanted to take our time with her and get her back in the gym and get her bearing straight and everything else. But, she's back in hitting pads with Coach Giff. She's back in the room at our pro practices, doing all the things that she did when she was a world champion. So she's like my sister, man. I love her to death, and it's great having her back in the gym. The gym didn't feel the same without her, and having her back definitely now feels like home.
Can't wait to see what happens with Miesha as well. I mean, I feel like I'm saying that with every fighter out of your gym right now. I can't wait to see what happens, but it's legitimately true. There's just so much stuff going on coming out of Xtreme Couture. One of the second last question is, and this has to be, your selection has to come from retired fighters. Is there, name 3 retired fighters that if we had a time machine, you could go back and coach? What 3 would you pick?
Randy Couture. That's it, man. He's my guy. And there was a moment when we were walking out of we fought in Israel. Ryan fought in Israel. Randy was in our corner, of course. Ryan won, and we're coming out of the cage. It was me and Randy, and he just put his arm around me. We're walking back to the back to go to medicals, and he said, "Damn, kid, I wish you and I had a run at this together." He goes, I wish it was me and you running this. And that to me was, man, it was one of the best compliments I received. I wanted to cry right then and there, because he's been a guy that I've looked up to my entire life. He's been a guy that when I first started watching the sport, it was synonymous to Randy Couture. And then coming to Xtreme Couture and watching him, win a belt at the heavyweight division that he wasn't expected to win, and watching him, beat Gabe Gonzaga and compete against Brock Lesnar, and fighting Brandon Vera and all these guys, and being a part of those training camps. It's really come full circle. And that's what, to me, was so beautiful about the Francis Ngannou fight for me, was the first time I stepped in Xtreme Couture, Randy won that belt, and I felt like we brought that belt home where it properly belonged.
Full circle. And I think that encompasses your journey so far. Full circle, but it's not over yet.
Yes, sir.
And you're continuing to push on and continuing, obviously, to encourage, to develop, to motivate the next group of fighters and the current group of fighters that are obviously there. This last question, one thing I'm passionate about is the growth of the sport. And this is why when I do the podcast, I speak to guys operating at the elite and the highest level of sport like yourself. And then I speak to guys on the amateurs and guys coming up through and all that stuff. I love hearing about different people's journeys, their mindset, their goals, their aspirations, all that stuff. But MMA as a sport is continuing to grow and to grow rapidly. What does MMA as a sport, overall, everything, what does it need to do, or what do we need to do as fans, as coaches, as fighters, to continue to help that growth?
Man, it's hard to say. I think just like anything, you kind of figure it out on the fly. But I in a lot of ways, the sport is beautiful because it's tough, it's mean, and that's inside the cage, but it's equally as tough and mean outside of the cage as well. The MMA media, the fan base can be harsh at times. A lot of people aren't predicated to really understand what the 8-week training camp looks like, what it really takes put into a camp, and then all we get to see is the 15 or 25 minutes in the cage, but not what it took to get there, and not what happens after. So I think just for the sport and the overall growth of it is, show a little bit more empathy and kind of understanding what these men and women are doing on a day-to-day basis to sacrifice to entertain. And, people are quick to be critical rather than they are to be complimentary. This sport is one of the hardest sports I've ever seen in my life, from physical standpoint and the mental standpoint. And once you're involved in this sport, as whether it's a media level or as actual athlete or coach, the respect that you have for these men and women, I think, really jump off the page, and what they go through. So I think the overall growth and development, to me, to answer your question, I think you need to show a little bit more empathy and understanding to what it takes to actually be in the sport.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And we touched a little bit on Tyron Woodley earlier. I remember Tyron's last couple of fights, social media, he's a bum, he's done, he's washed up, he's finished, all this sort of stuff. But from even talking to Kobe on the podcast, someone well, Kobe's journey was tough. It's hard, and he's just trying to make it. And away from the glitz, the glamour, the lights, the titles, behind the scenes, there is an incredible work rate, consistency, drive, determination, heartache. Even when a judge who, again, I don't want to sound like I'm battering judges, but I do it quite a lot. When a judge maybe doesn't understand and gets something completely wrong, and everyone's got their hands on their head, and it's costing people jobs and money and opportunities and all that kind of stuff. I think the respect for the people stepping in there to go to war, the respect for the people behind the scenes, motivating them, helping them through a weight cut, just being on a plane for them, being away from home, being away from family, all those little things behind the scenes that we don't see. You worded it perfectly. We see them when the lights are on and they're in a cage for 20 minutes. We don't see behind the curtain. And I think that's really it. We just don't get it sometimes.
Yeah, it's it's sad. It's sad sometimes that I think it's a reflection a lot of times of the people's insecurities. That they feel the need to take the time to go on a profile that has no profile picture, no followers. They created something just to go spread more hate. To say something mean or hurtful to somebody that they've never met, or they'll never be able to hold a candle to when it comes to athleticism, or the courage to what it takes to get in there and actually do it. So it's quite ironic to me, but in a lot of ways it's poetic. It's beautiful too, because you have to be able to have thick skin. You have to be able to roll with the punches and to adapt to some of that stuff as well. But the sport is what it is, and it's I think kind of why we love it.
Absolutely. To me, it's the best sport in the world because anything can happen. We've seen Ali or Quinta take a fight on a day's notice against Khabib and go the distance. And then we've seen Khabib get in there with Justin Gaethje, who's an NCAA wrestling background, and get beaten 2 rounds. It's just incredible. As a sport, I think it is just the craziness of it makes it, to me, the best sport in the world.
Anything can happen any day.
Absolutely. But guys, this has been Eric Nicksick, head coach of Xtreme Couture. This has been MMA Mayhem, the last episode. Eric, thank you so much for giving me your time this afternoon. I went on probably a lot longer than what I probably should have and kept you on a very busy weekend, and I do humbly apologize, but I thank you so much for taking the time out today.
No problem at all, Darren. Thanks for having me on, my man.